Hello. Hello. Kizuba kama pamim. So the Sikha is coming to explain the Aveda of the Levium that's spoken about in this week's Parsha, the way it's a Inyan Nitzchi, which really, that's what the Chassidish Parsha, the Likkutei this week, the first Maimer, is about how the whole Aveda of the Levium and each of the Levium, the way it's there, B'nefesh Adam, like the Rebbe is going to bring in the Sichos. So the Rebbe says, "Aklal shatera initzchus betakfehu b'negea l'chol hatera kula, gama anyadim shebetera asher begashmis einam bizmanenu nimtzaim hem gam achshav beruchniusam." Even those inyanim batera that aren't there begashmis, like the inyanim hamishkan, they're there beruchnis v'haruchnis himaker v'sheresh v'gashmis. So the fact that they're there beruchnis hatas tamid gashmis. V'chein be'inyan hanemer b'parshasenu. Minyan b'nei Gershon b'nei Merari v'haschalasi hanemeres b'seif parsha kedemes. Minyan b'nei Kas hamistayim b'parshasenu. So the story that the parsha tells us about the counting of the Leviim, she'af shebegashmis eina inyan nitzchi, she'yatzivu l'mneisem v'minyan asmer akpam achas b'shon hashenis b'tzeisam eretz Mitzrayim. Begashmis, it took place only once in history. And the Rebbe is coming in the Sikha to explain the Inyan Nitzchi of Minyan HaLeviim. The Yuvan Zabahaktim. Lama Hutzruchu Yisrael Lihishar Bamidbar Abam Shana. The Chayra Zapela. The Midbar was a very awesome, frightening place. If the Yidden had to be delayed from going into Eretz Yisrael for 40 years, why did they have to spend that time in the Midbar, Nachash, Sarah, Va'akrav, which was such a dangerous and a frightening place? They couldn't go for 40 years into Eretz Yisrael. The Gzeira wasn't that they had to be suffering throughout the 40 years. It was that they couldn't go into Eretz Yisrael, because this punishment was midah keneged midah. Chatu bazah shalei ratzu la'alei l'Eretz Yisrael. V'lochei nenshu shalei konsu eila midah keneged midah. Aval harei hayu yichelim liyes mem shana eila b'makom yishuv shalei b'Eretz Yisrael. But these 40 years they should have spent in a yeshiva, in a positive place. Farvas in a midbar, leiba midbar. Ubefrat, in the midbar that they were in, that was b'midbar hagadol v'neira nachash sarah v'akra v'tzimoyin asher imai. So what was the reason that time in history that the 40 years had to be spent in the midbar? Pashta shayla. V'inyan hu kemavur b'Likkutei reish parsha seinu explains the Alter Rebbe in Likkutei in the Chassidish parsha of this week. Shatam nisiyasam b'midbar ma'mishkan v'keilav haya. Sagt Alter Rebbe, the purpose of the Yidden going in the Midbar, so Alter Rebbe explains that the Inyan of the Midbar is Asher lo yeshev Adam Sham. Nothing grows over there. That shows on Klippa. Why? Because from Kedusha causes growth. Kedusha causes hashpah. The nature of Kedusha is that it causes its mashpia on others. Someone who's batal telekos is mashpia to others. The nature of Klippa is that it needs for itself and it's not mashpia. Therefore, the midbar, where nothing grows, shows on Klippa. And that in the midbar there was Nachash, Sarah, Va'akrav, because they correspond with the Shalosh Klippas Atmeis. B'meila, the Yidden had to take the Mishkan in the Midbar, because traveling there with the Mishkan is bringing over there Gili Alakus, and the Gili Alakus is Mevatel the Klippas. V'yasera mizu, Aidei shechniu esachitzeinem v'acheshach v'amaster hayu mamshichim Gili Alakus. they changed the midbar. Not only they stopped the klippos from being mashpia, but they exchanged it. They substituted it with alikus. So that's the first thing that the Rebbe explains, that they had to be in the midbar because they were being machnia. There shouldn't be a unique asachitzein. So the Rebbe in Ha'ara 8 asks a big question. If not for the Chet HaMeraglim, wollten sie doch gegangen gleich in Eretz Yisrael, then they wouldn't be in the midbar. Here we're saying in the Likkutei it says that they had to be in the midbar anyways. And the Alter Rebbe explains over there that that's the achana to the Gili Alikus of Lasid Lavi. That the preparation for that is the bittul haklipas that happened through the Eden going in the midbar. So how's it possible that if the Eden wouldn't have sinned, it wouldn't have happened? Says the Rebbe in the Ara, Umashilulei Chet HaMeraglim lo yayu tzrichim liyizba midbar me'b'shana. Yesh leimar lefisha oz hayabir be'efen acher v'aderech hamvur b'ter b'negil Chet HaMeraglim. Because they were there to be mevar, but when they're in a higher level, then the bitter could have been in a higher efen. The Chetei Tzadas was the inyan of birurim, but if Adam Arisha wouldn't have eaten from the Chetei Tzadas, the whole Avedas HaBirurim would have been be'efen Eiliyis. So this is what it says in Likkutei Torah, touched up the Rebbe, the pastures. Haidei Masois b'nei Yisrael b'midbar, haya ha'anan heireges ha'nechashim v'akravim. Through the Yidden going in the midbar, so the Anan killed the Nechashim and the Akravim. What was the reason that the midbar was lo yashav adam sham begashmis? Why couldn't there be civilization? Because people can't live when they're such dangerous creatures. So by killing, by the Anan, through the Yidden going there, the Anan killed the Nachash, Sarah, Akrav, so they made it livable. So v'gam havcho es hamidbar l'makom yishav. And we explained this now. What does it mean they changed it to makom yishav? Midbar nivdal mimakom yishav beikar b'shnei inyanim. Aleph lo yeshav adam sham, v'chashayu b'shishim ribi b'nei Yisrael yeshav adam sham. The whole nature, the characteristic of the midbar is nobody lives there. The mere fact that the Yidden traveled there with 600,000 Yidden is the Gevaran civilization. And based the other characteristic of the midbar is that it's in Eretz Leizerua. Ubiyos b'nei Yisrael b'midbar hayu hamayim mebeir shalmirya magdilu mini d'sham b'lanet b'yitzay. When the Yidden were in the midbar, things grew. Yeah, there's a whole reshimas from the Rebbe about this. If it got a din of Rishus Harabim, when they were there, then things grew. There was water, there was Be'er Shal Miriam, there was Nisim. So the two characteristics that designates a midbar as lo yashav adam was changed. So this is what it says in Likkutei Torah as the reason why the Yidden traveled in the midbar to change the klipa to kedusha, to change lo yashav adam sham to yashav adam sham. Now the Rebbe uses this to answer our question: why did the Levium get counted? Shenimnu haLeviim b'miyuchad miben shleishim shana la'avedasam denesias hamishkan v'kelev shal yadam hafches hamidbar leretz neshavas kanal b'Likkutei Torah. That's why did the Levium have to specifically be counted? In Likkutei Torah, the Alter Rebbe explains that carrying the mishkan in the midbar, that's like the weapon. That's the tool to change over the midbar to amakim for diras adam elyon. Who carried the midbar lepeo? Gershon, Kas, and Merari. They carried the different parts of the midbar, and therefore they needed a special koyach that through carrying the midbar they should change klipa to kedusha. What gave them that koyach to count them? Naso b'miyuchad. בזה דבר חשוב, ולכן המדבר לא יפעל עליהם כדבר שבמניין לבטו, ואדרבה הם יהפכו אצל ארץ נשבת, the koyach that they shouldn't be affected by the midbar, but they should be able to influence the midbar and change the midbar was from being counted. That's the inyan beruchnis, bepnimis anyanim, why it was necessary. When we understand what was the inyan of carrying the mishkan and the midbar, we see why to be able to accomplish this, the Levium had to be counted. Now, says the Rebbe, will understand how this is an inyan nitzchi. Inyan zalas if mi midbar eretz neshavet.
I don't understand the word. The Rebbe says that the Levim have to become something chashuv. Why don't all you? Like, what's the word called Levim becoming chashuv?
Who's the one who carried the Mishkan in the Midbar? That's what it's under Levim. So when we understand what is being done by carrying the Mishkan in the Midbar, now we understand that the Alter Rebbe in Likkutei speaks about the Mishkan being carried in the Midbar. So as the Rebbe, from this we could understand why the ones who carry it need some special empowerment. What's the empowerment from counting them?
But all Yidden were carried. So why are we limiting it to Levim?
What? All Yidden what?
All Yidden were counted.
All Yidden were counted, Ein Chanami, for the same reason. But what the Rebbe is explaining over here, and what's our parsha about, that even though all Yidden were counted, the Levim had a special counting. Why did they need a special counting? Because in this Inyan, just like all Yidden needed to be a Davar Chashev, because the Levim had to carry the Mishkan, they needed an extra Chshivas. They needed an extra Keach not to be batal, because their whole Avodah, which was carrying the Mishkan, had to be payal on the Midbar, that it should become a Midbar.
And why Dafke David and the Siyas Akel and the Mishkan is what would pale these two things? Chair has nothing to do with what the Rebbe said.
What?
The Rebbe said the two things are Leia Shusha Adam and Eretz Leizerua, right? What does that have to do with carrying the Kelim of the Mishkan?
That's where you see the change. But what is the change? The change is that Klippa, which is the absence of Elikus, is being changed with Elikus.
Mm-hmm.
What kills the Klippa and replaces it with Elikus? The Mishkan, as I state in Likkutei. The Rebbe says, you see this begashmi is that the gashmi is the characteristic of the midbar, both characteristics that define it of the midbar as a midbar wasn't there. But what is this nishtalshal from? The sheirish of the midbar is that beruchnis, it's a mokim of klippa. What's the way that they did that? This isn't how they did it. This is where you see the change. How did they do it? By killing the klippas, the ananayahirik anachar sarvat. Now that we explained what was the minion of the Levim, now we'll be able to explain how it's a davar nitzchi. That's the main point of the Sicha. In Eis Gimel. Inyan zeh, la'aseis mi midbar eretz neshav. V'kayach hazeh mo mailai de'at sivi lim neisam, when you nitzchi k'chal yanim shebeteira kanal, b'chal der v'der. Now we could explain how this is negeya b'nitzchias. K'shemizbeinin ha'adam ba'sviva bahu nimtza. If a person looks at his surroundings, sometimes a person looks at his surroundings, obviously not a bacher that's at home, but gas, and he sees that his surroundings is a midbar asher leyeshav adam sham. Ki reid b'nei adam b'svivase einam yedim me'inyan alakus adam elyon. Havada adam elyon is faran. What does it mean to lo yeshav adam sham? He's not known. You look at your surroundings and people basinish from Kigatzachkai. Ve'ela hayodim, ve'ela miserim l'snai, kifi erois HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'teira, are also, it's not k'deboy, because arein tzadik baras ashiyasa tei v'lo yechta al kapanim yachser mik'deboy l'mevet shetzarech liyis b'avidase. Even the people who are the Frume Yidden and the Chsidim and the Tmimim, but if you really pay attention, you'll probably come to the conclusion that even them are not acting the way they're supposed to. They're not the way a Tomim is supposed to look. So it's still, b'bchinas midbar lo yeshav adam sham, they didn't the Eibishter, v'mevalt, a way you expect that a Tomim should be in the Eibishter. And when a person thinks about this, and he pays, and he contemplates this, shalpiza v'terkum tzamaskana, hare nimsu b'midbar asher lo yeshav adam sham. He comes to a maskana, gefindt sich in ha'art, was lo yeshav adam sham, ki adam ha'elyon einenu sham be'efen shalis yashvus kniyas. The Adam Elyon, the Eibishter, is not comfortable there, is not settled there. So if I look around, there's no Elikus, Yidden dienen nicht der Eibishter, das heißt, die freie Yidden dienen den ganzen nicht der Eibishter. Die Mesnagdim dienen doch ich nicht der Eibishter. Sich Siddim, das ist doch nicht Kidibay.
Worse, yes, no?
What?
The Mesnagdim or the freie?
Chas v'shalom, das ist nicht der Eibishter. Und der Tzmimim is nicht wie Kedebay lemevet shetzarech liyis b'avidase. So then he says, if so, I'm in a midbar. Ki adam v'yachal ha'eved, so the one who's trying to serve the Eibishter could come lipa ba'atzvus v'yish chas v'shalom So a person will come to a maskana, the realization as I gefin sich in a midbar, was tue ich in a midbar? Let me go somewhere else. Let me go to a place where that is the kedusha. Azaba hayra. Now this is the main part of the sikha. It comes on this hayra. L'nsaya b'midbar u'l'shameisei k'nesias b'nei Yisrael b'midbar shebeparshaseinu. K'meisha b'nesiyasem b'midbar azay salpitzivi hakadosh baruch hu v'hefchei v'avcha midbar l'makom yishuv keinu b'negei l'kolach b'echad miYisrael b'chol azmanim sheb'chol makom shenimtza gam makom u'midbar shaman harei hayesei sham hu b'mikbar chatz v'shalom lei b'mikbar chatz v'shalom el b'shuchus shel hakadosh baruch hu. So there comes the lesson to every person. If you're in a place, it's a shlichus for that from the Eibishter. Just like the Yidden had a shlichus to go in the midbar, don't try to run to somewhere where it's better, where there's more kedusha. To dain avedada. Let's finish a little bit the pnim over here, because you're b'shlichus from the Eibishter me'avayim mitzad gever kinanu. So here there's a Ha'ara 19. That's the main thing I wanted to learn with you. I don't really understand the Ha'ara, but it's a very, very, very fundamental Ha'ara. So we'll try to learn it together. So the Rebbe said the gist of it. He's going to elaborate it now from there till the end of the Sikha. But this was the main point of the Sikha, the lesson of Minyan B'nai Levi. When we understand what is Minyan B'nai Levi, it's giving them the kayach to be in the midbar and not be affected by the midbar, but to overpower the midbar. So that's for everyone, that everyone is in a midbar. As mekuk sich zu, metrach sich harayim, we realize we're in a midbar, and we have to have this ayra, leif nicht avek for the midbar, to dein aveda, zu ibermach in the midbar. Right? That's the nikud of the sikh. On mit der wissen, as matakeach of them from the Eibishter. So the Rebbe in Ha'ara 19 asks, Ameridik Shaila. That's a Shaila not on this Sikha just. It's a Shaila L'cheira on the whole mindset and the whole approach of Lubavitch. That L'cheira das stimmt nicht mit der Rambam. Says the Rebbe, Ein stira lazem ima shekosaf HaRambam im haya b'medina shemin hagea ha'roim chulu yelechu. Let's get clear the question. Yeah, so the Lashon HaRambam is in Perek, the beginning, like the Rebbe says, the beginning of Perek Vav Mehilchis Deis. So the Rambam's Lashon is Derech Briyasei Shel Adam. Derech Briyasei Shel Adam Lies nimshach b'dei Esav u'v'maisav achareya v'chaveira v'neya k'minik anshe medinase. Now listen carefully. The Rambam says a whole arichas. Lefichach tzarech ha'adam le'eschaber le'tzadikim v'leishev eitzel ha'chacham ha'chachamim tamei k'dei she'yilmid mi'maseyem v'yisrachek min ha'reshaim ha'hilchim b'cheshech k'dei she'lo yilmid mi'maseyem. It's Mishnayos and Avis, like the Mefarshim say, Harchek Mishachin Ra, Val Tischaber La Rasha, and later Mishnayos that have the same Teichen. And this is what the Rambam, that's the makir of the Rambam. When there's a sviva, when there's a neighborhood, when there's a surrounding that has negative influence, Hapman Halacha and Rambam, midaf for that in the Vaiterim, midaf for that Navegin. V'chein, the Rambam continues, Im haya b'medina shemin hagesa roim, ve'in anasha hilchim b'derech yeshara, yelech l'makim sh'anasha tzadikim v'neyagim b'derech teiv. Someone who's in a place where the people are bad, geh von dort navek, geht zur Art, was the Menschen dort sind gut. The exact opposite, seemingly, of what the Rebbe just said in the Sikha, right? V'im hayu Kol ha-medina shehu yoidam v'shemei shmuasan neyagim b'derech loy teva k'mei zmanenu. If all of the places in the world that he knows about are corrupt and immoral and not proper, k'mei zmanenu, says the Rambam, like his time. or that he doesn't have access to places where people behave properly. Yeshev levada yechidi k'inyan shenemar yeshev badad v'yidim. At least don't associate with anyone else. Al tischaber hab nicht zetamet keinen. V'im hayu roim v'chatam shem manichem meisileshem b'mdina elam keinen sara v'imon v'neig v'mon v'managam hara. If they force him to have to do with them, Yetze la ma'aris v'lachavachim v'lamidbaris v'al yanig atzme b'derech hatam kin yishenem yitneinim b'midbar b'loin erech. So the Rambam says to go to Midbar. You hear? The Rambam says to go to Midbar, not like the Rebbe says in the Sicha. Not to go to Midbar, even though Midbar is a place of Klippa. The Rambam says to run to the Midbar in order to run away from a place of Klippa. I feel the only place where there's no people is the Midbar. Leifa Midbar, mi etneinu v'Midbar malay nerech. It's the Chameir Dikeshayla. How does that fit with Shlichus? Which is what the Rebbe is speaking about. So it's not just a question of the Sicha and the Hira that the Rebbe says in the Sicha, Medav Geinin HaMidbar, V'nish Nispalver for the Midbar. It's the whole way, the whole concept of Shlichus. How does this fit with the concept of Shlichus? How does it fit with what we find in Chazal about going to places and teaching Torah to people who don't know, who don't learn? So that's the question that the Rebbe is asking over here. So you say this like a question that the Mefarshim Taka ask. I saw Mefarshim on Avis. I saw they bring even the Svasemes asks on the Mishnah of Harchik Mishachin Ra, Mishnah, that says Harchik that you shouldn't be in a bad surrounding. Don't make seemingly don't make cheshbenis that you could influence them. No, you have to run away from them. And that's what the Rambam seems to be paskening. And wie stimmt das mit das, was mir gefällt, that you're supposed to try to influence other people.
What does the Mefarshim ask?
What?
What does the Mefarshim ask?
What?
What do the Mefarshim ask? What do they ask on?
They ask from Gemaras. Let me see if I can find it. But what that you seem to find in Gemara, in later Svarim, they ask from Hanhaka Papel, they call it also Shlichus. They're not talking about Lubavitch Shlichus, but they're asking about, they call it different writers from going to places where they have Mashpia Zainaf Andre. Yeah, what? Kirov work, yeah. But they asked this question. So is this
what's Taka the Makaitis?
What?
Taka the Makaitis in Chazal.
That you're supposed to do it?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me see if I could find where Mishnayis, where do I have this farm of it? Hasvasemes Hiksha. There's a few Mefarshim. Hasvasemes Hiksha Mimashakasa Ba'avis to Rab Nasim. The Arin Akoyin is Chabel Rishon K'dei Lachzirin L'mutav. So that's the Hasvasemes. He says Arin Akoyin himself, he ran to Rishon. He was mischaber with Rishon. How does that fit with this Mishnah that says Al Tischaber?
Chassidim have a vart on as panim le Gehenim, no?
Yeah. Eina Chanami. Good, that's a Chassidish vart. Fragt aber for the Pashtas HaMishnah.
As panim could go.
What?
That's the Mishnah speaking for a Bereshis panim.
Aber the Rambam sagt doch ein Pashtas. They ask also.
Can't hear you.
Yeah. They ask also in obviously Rab Naso says you should be mischaber with Rosh. And they ask for Psukim.
Face the mic when you're talking. So.
Yeah, hello?
Yeah.
They've asked from a Gemara in Sanhedrin that it says that Rab Zera was a Mekar of the Biryonim. Various Chazal that we seek to see. So one of the places that they ask
What does it say that was said?
in Avis the Rab Nassan, it says two things. In Avis the Rab Nassan, it says that Aaron HaKoyin went and he was mischaber l'Rishayim in order to be mekar of them. Say that Getan Kirov, just like we do. But that seems to go against the Mishnah and seems to go against the Rambam. And he brings the Tesis Yantif asks the question. Yeah, and then they bring a Gemara in Sanhedrin that says that Rab Zera was Mekarev de Biryonim. The Gemara in Sanhedrin is Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph. Rab Zera was Mekarev de Biryonim. A few places in Chazal today, for us, the question is obviously much stronger. That's our whole life is to go on Shlichus. The Rambam seems to be shayla that. So the Mefarshim, it's not the Mefarshim, I see it mainly in later day Mefarshim. There's the Sfasemis, there's the Tesis Yantif, a few Mefarshim from earlier speak about it, and mainly later writers speak about it, but they don't have much to add. But in the question they ask also, from similar to the Rambam and the Mishnah, which L'cheira looks like the Makar of the Rambam, of Hachik Mishachin Ra, says also in a Mishnah later, in Perek Vav, I think, that the Mishnah says the story with Rabbi Yesi ben Kisma, Pamachat Sayisi Mahalech Baderech Upaga Biyadam Echad, Va'anasan Lishalem Bechzati Lishalem. He said, Afilu Nesin Lekol Kesev Ezav Va'avarim Tevis Margalius Eini Darala B'Makim Teira. Yeah, that seems to fit with the Rambam and the Mishnah Harchik Mishachid Ra, but that doesn't seem to fit with Shlichos and with Arin HaKayim. So, Benegea to the Mishnah of Rabbi Yesi ben Kisma, I think you heard, I think it was last year, or this year, last year, I don't remember, Rabbi Reuben gave a shiur in Yeshiva once. He said the Vart. I heard the Vart from him many years ago. But he said a very...
Not last year, this year.
What? Hello? You hearing me or not?
Yeah, we hear you.
It wasn't last year or this year.
Huh? He asked this question on the Mishnah. Rabbi Yesi ben Kisma said, "Eini dara lo b'mokim teira." How does that fit with our whole mindset as midavgin of shlichus? And then he asked another question that you see in Gemara, that Rabbi Yesi ben Kisma went to Rome and he built a yeshiva. Hatidachnish mekayim given eini dara lo b'mokim teira. So he said a very geschmack beer in the Mishnah. He said that Rabbi Yesi ben Kisma, the pshat is different. That they wanted that he should come to their place, so they should have a yid vazitz to learn, so it shouldn't bother them with their conscience. They'll support him, he should learn, and they'll be able to have a good time. So Rabbi Yesi ben Kisma said, no, Avada is ready to live with them and to be mekar of them, but only if they agree that it should become a mokim teira, as they will mitlernen with them, as they will nicht kommen lernen. And that's what you find, Taka, that he went and he made a yeshiva. That's Mekayim given. Not that he's not going to go, but he's not going to go on a condition that he should learn instead of them. He's going to go in a way that he should learn with them.
I heard it's a diuk from the Maral Miprag's brother. I forgot what it was called. He says, Bim koimenu as anstatt uns.
They are, okay, very geschmack.
Imanu bim koimenu.
Imanu bim koimenu, sehr geschmack. So I saw in those who write about this question today that some of them, not this, they don't say this pshat in the Mishnah of Rabbi Yesi ben Kisma, although some of them bring the Mishnah, but some of them, in writing, Vas Tutman Lepeo Mamish, so they say, well, if you're going to a place and the people are willing to be in this karev, so then that doesn't go against Harchik Mishachin Ra. However, that answer doesn't help for the Sicha. Doesn't seem to help for the Rambam. Over here, we're saying that you should go to a midbar. It doesn't help for our avoid of going on shlichus. A shliach who goes on shlichus doesn't first get agreement from the people of the city. When Rabbi Kina went to California, when he was a new shliach, when they first opened up shop in Long Beach in California, So there was a store in Long Beach called Lloyd's of London of Long Beach. A big store, Lloyd's of London. They had the brand Lloyd's of London of Long Beach. A big furniture store, I think it was. I remember the name. I'll tell you the name soon. I remember the name. So this was owned by a Jew, a very wealthy Jew. He came once to a meeting with Rabbi Kunin, and he offered him a big sum of money. I don't remember the amount. I heard the amount. A big sum of money if he moves out of town. We're not interested in having these black hats in Long Beach. If you move out of town, I'll give you a huge donation. So Rabbi Kunin answered him, "You're going to move out of town before I move out of town." So I remember when I was a bacher in yeshiva, which was a number of years later, there was advertisements all over Lloyd's of London of Long Beach going out of business sale. So you don't ask them if they want you there. On the contrary, most places they don't want you there. And, so how does that stem with the Rambam? So the shaila is l'cheira starke shaila. So here the Rebbe addresses the question. I don't know where else the Rebbe addresses the question. I looked at it. So the Rebbe says like this. What?
The Sichos, the Leo Shapiro he's the Haggais in the first minute, and the what's it called? Part of the Sichos, they first minute conscious of all the Haggais, and one of the Haggais is that this cat over here, it says Azeh B'Ha'ira. It says say by Midbar Shanese. So the original lashon was Azeh B'Ha'ira Minesias B'nei Sol Midbar. No Ha'ira to actual L'Nsei. If you're in a place, don't mean spell. I would change it across to that. I would add it. When it say by Midbar Shanese, the Ha'ira is to go out to the Midbar. Part of the Ha'ira. So.
To go, not to run away.
Yeah.
So. Fragt der Rebbe, wie stimmt das mit der Rambam? Says der Rebbe, ki atam l'din zeh, hu k'mei shekasav ha-Rambam sham lifnei zeh, derech priyase shal adam liyes nimshach chulu, noye k'minig anshe medinase, leficha chulu im haya b'mdina chulu. Hainu sham meduber b'mi shenimse b'madrega kazu shenimshach achrei min hagi hamak. Aval machlet b'chol hatekev she'olav lifel al asfiva l'shanei l'teiv amru chazal haba l'taher acherim misayinais. The Rebbe is medayik the lashon haba l'taher is l'taher, not l'taher misayinais. Shenitin le'akeich l'mayla shaloi liyis nimshachu v'ader haba l'shanis anshe amdina chulu kibifnim. So what's exactly the answer of the Rebbe? That he's medayik from the Rambam, that because the Rambam said derech priyase shel adam, so therefore there's hagbolus in the Rambam. And I have to be makdim that kemedach meinin that the Rambam is a nicht a Lubavitcher Rambam, this Rambam. Yeah. If you look in Igris, look at the Mafteches, at least 2 or 3 places I found where the Rebbe, people asking Eitzes where to live, and the Rebbe says, based on this, Kraheira, Hameira, Hagadol, Harambam, you get a person deciding where to live, the Hameira, Hagadol, Harambam, to live in a place, Vusadam, Meir, Shamayim. This Rebbe, so the Rebbe does take it to Allah. Come remaining that maybe the Rambam doesn't apply to someone who's going to go be mashpia on others. In that same letter, one of the letters, in the same letter, there says, and the next paragraph he says, and wherever the place is, so even someone who's being mashpia on his sviva, geht zu ihm der Rambam, that der Briata Shaladim mechanisch gehen. So there's one possible answer, but it doesn't seem to be the emphasis over here. That the Rambam says derech briyase shaladam. Derech briyase shaladam means says a teva dikizach. And since it's a teva dikizach, so therefore the reason why you're going is in order to influence other people in things that are apitava, so then we say shluchei mitzvah in nizaken, that someone who's going from mitzvah doesn't have to worry about tavadik dangers. So just like you have the Gemara and the Rambam, right? The Gemara in Kiddushin, you learned it this year, I think, right? And the Rambam in Hilchos Talmud Torah, that if the children are going to Cheder and they have to go over a rickety bridge, so they go, right? You remember what I'm talking about? Yeah. So what's the reason? Because Shluchim Mitzvah in Nizak.
Psachim?
Oh, the Gemara is in Psachim.
I think so.
Could be. But the Rambam is in Hilchos Talmud Torah. It's brought down, the Rambam brings this thing. But this word doesn't seem to say in the Hara. So, L'cheira, the Rebbe's answer is, the Rambam was maktim derech briyasei shalad. Why is the Rambam emphasizing this fact that this is the way a person is created? Because everything, a person always has the ability to go beyond. The whole inyan of a person is to go beyond his nature in everything. So when it's for Inyane Ha'elam, when the person was asking the Rebbe where to live for personal reasons, for Gashmistic reasons, he doesn't have a Kedushadik reason to live in a certain place. So then he has to take into consideration his nature. But when it comes to matters of Torah mitzvahs, the whole avodah of Torah mitzvahs is that a person has to go beyond his nature. The whole teichin of many, in Chassidus you learn, right? Today was Yud Beis Sivan, the Siyam Yimei HaTashlumin of Shavuos. In Chassidus it says, why does Aseres HaDibros start Anechi Havaya Lekecha Asher Yitzisicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim? Because the inyan of Matan Torah is to go out of the Mitzvah, not Asher Barasi Shamayim V'aretz, is because the inyan of Matan Torah is to go beyond the Mitzvah and Mugvulim. B'meila, says the Ram, maybe, that the Rambam is makdim derech priyasei shaladim, that this halacha is because of the nature of a person. So therefore, when the going to the place has an inyan of Torah mitzvahs, so then the person has the ability, like he says, to be machlut b'tekev. If he's machlut b'tekev, that says 4 Torah mitzvahs can areiskin for zayin agbal. And therefore, in the same letter, the Rebbe says to the person to be mashpia on the sviva, because his question wasn't about going to a place for the sake of being mashpia. His question is where to learn, where to live. That 11 later teva adam. His question was a gashmistic question. But when it comes to shlichos, that I'm coming to be mekayim the mitzvah, like the Rambam, like Chazal say, Eives Abrius and Mekarvan the Torah, like the obvious the Naso that all those mefarshim bring about Are, got Yemel Tata Akayach to Machal Zayin B'Teike. So according to what you see in those other mefarshim, so the makir for this is also the stories in Gemara about Rab Zera. But the Rab is being medayik et la'alacha from the Rambam. Maybe the Rambam says derech briyasei, that's nature. So nature is a chiyuv. The Rambam says halacha, everything up till Torah mitzvahs. But when it comes to kiyum at Torah mitzvahs, that's to mashpia zayin. So the whole aved of a person is to go beyond his nature, and which is that achlata b'teik. Well, back to the panim. But it needs beer nesaf. This is all that I could think of. Pimash kasav Rambam v'lo shevet Levi b'lvad. Elakolish v'shashay not v'ruchi eisei libada lam l'fnei avay l'shar sayeh avay chelke v'nachlaf k'mei shezach l'koinim l'levim harei kol echad v'echad b'mrak yinadev ruchi eisei l'hayris drachav v'yishar mishpatav v'tzadikim v'rabim yutan l'mamayla koyach v'achshivas at she'enei batal umidarga l'darga d'bnei gersh nasi yisreish gam l'tzi yisreish b'tziruf l'gadlei men avad v'darga d'bnei kas nasi yisreish b'fnei atzmei. So the Rebbe says this seirah from what happened with the Levium is to everyone.
Stop, Wagner.
Yeah.
My father has a word. He says, there's a word, the famous word Chassidus about kol ador b'chutz la'aretz kilo even if it's zara.
The Gemara says kol ador b'chutz la'aretz deimei k'mishein le'yalika shenemar ki yirshuni hayem mistapeach b'nachos Hashem.
So what this is that door, machine called door b'chutzos, machine door gate. If you know that you're on the way, that's what the magid. So there said, any door el came tera. Kilo mein ikar platz kind whatever.
Okay. The Rebbe says about Rabbi Lazar. It says Rabbi Lazar. The Rebbe said in the Fabrengen Yiddish Tammuz that there was a certain place that they drank Maya. They drank good water and good wine. And Rabbi Lazar went there. And Rabbi Lazar was the one that the Mishnah says, "And you call Chachma Yisrael, B'kaf Mizayim, and Rabbi Lazar will be B'kaf Shniya Machrias Kulam." And he forgot his Talmud because he was Imshach Basrayim. So the Rebbe said it wasn't because he went to the place, but he was Imshach Basrayim. The Rebbe was speaking then about the country. So in Ha'ara 21 there was a Yisera Mizah. Yeah, that he said in the Pnim, that he changed it. He said not only that it doesn't have the chesaron, it has a mile of a. Not only it makes it ois midbar, but he makes it have the mile of midbar that there's no other. It's higher than other. And that's the only place that there could be the Gili of Torah. And this has to do not just a person who looks at his surroundings. Not only could a person get Marash Cheredik from looking at his surroundings and seeing that everyone else is not doing the Kedibailim of it, but even when he looks at himself, Vaideza Efsha Shayavil de Yish Chas V'Shalom B'Chashvei Eich Ucha L'Shanis Hanagasi B'Fratim Over V'Shana B'Shanasa B'Keheter Fratim Ayarogel B'Yesim B'Beis Pomu B'Hergel Nasa Teva. A person looks at himself and he says also, I'm a midbar, and a little bit of the Kedusha, and he can't overcome the midbar. Zeh Ba'ira K'Moshe B'nei Levi Shayuaz B'nei Shleishim Shana V'Mayla V'ad Azlei Avdu Es Avedas HaMishkan B'Chaz Nitin Lamakayach Vad L'Nasi Afresh Mi'az V'Ali Yunesi HaMishkan V'Yapcha Midbar L'Makam Yishvu Ma'aser Rav Shanasa Koza B'Peyo. These Leviim, till then is they nicht given Leviim. If they would have made a cheshbon on nefesh, they would have said, for the last 30 years, I was not doing this aveda. How could I suddenly start it? Like a person says to himself that the last 17 years or 18 years, however many years, and I see that I never succeeded in becoming that ovid and that maskell, that Yerushalayim and that Chassidish Bacher the way I want. So now, I stop having hope that I'm going to be able to do it. Avdem Zakmin as Keinu b'chol echad ve'echad shemebli habit ha'matzavei adach b'im yachlik shemikan lahava yamid l'fnei avaya l'sharsei l'avdei yutan l'yakayach l'tar es atzmei v'es begodav. That the Levium had to be Matayra begodim also, that the Levusha Mikola Yanam Abilti Ritzuim Shayabavar B'yese B'midbar Ola Hamshech Gili Alikos B'nafshe V'ol of Yevim V'shachanti B'sech Mishkan L'Isparach. Basically, the Rebbe says this Eirah is also by a person who comes Aragafal from making a cheshbon and nefesh about himself. B'chtei Sha'adam Nusvasviva Shalei Yasu Dira L'Isparach Tzricha L'Yisaveda B'shnei HaKavim the Sur Meira or the Vasei Teiv. V'dugmas Melech Basar V'Adam Keshereitzim L'Sakin L'Dira Tzarech Lefanes HaHeichel Mikolichlach V'Tinavchu L'V'achach L'Sadasham Kelim Nar Keinu Gam Basia Sadira Shetzarech L'Zabeiz Anyanim Tzur Meira Vasei Teiv. Just like Adira Begashmis. So you need two inyanim. I have to make sure there's no dirt there, and then I could bring in the fancy couches and the fancy break fronts. So too by a person, he has to make sure as an ishta kain inyan built to. Vegan gam inyan zen nirmas b'bnei kershen b'nei kos neisei mishkan, that in them is nirmas these two avedas. Kershen and milashon gerish, like it says in this week's Likkutei Torah, Rebbe's Mitzayin Darab, which is surmeira, to chase away all the negative. Because of milashon v'lo yikas amim asifas v'kibbutz inyanim tevim is vasei tev. Kamesha gershen neilad l'fnei kas. Keinu gam b'seder aveda shebetchila tzarich li yisur meira v'achar kach vasei teiv. V'dugmas Sider Kalim Naim Shabala Acher Nikra Hechel Mikol Lichluch. Now you have to be miyashiv, the steerus in this. But in general, many places we say that Vasei Tev, especially the approach of Chassidus, is that Vasei Tev doesn't have to wait for Sur Meirah. And this week's Likkutei, this mimer that the Rebbe is mitzayin to, brings from a different mimer where he says that's the machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. That Beis Shammai says Kala Kamei Shehi, that according to what Sur Meirah you have, that's how you could have Vasei Tev. And Beis Hillel say Kala Nova Chasuda be Mamshech Vasei Tev b'Meilev et Uftam Sur Meirah. And sometimes we say, like we say over here, that you have to have first Sur Meirah in Likkutei Gufa. It says both ways. Good, so you'll look up the mimer and you'll figure out a mahalach in that. Pulei Saveda the Sur Meirah Vasei Tev Muvanim Mechilek Shebei Maseh B'Negesh LeMaseh B'Nei Kos. Negesh Naso Sirius HaMishkan Chu. Masheki B'Nei Kos Naso Klei HaMishkan HaVashulchan. And the difference between these two Avedas is like the difference between Sur Meirah and Vasei Tev. Like Sur Meirah, that's a protection and a prevention that there shouldn't be anything negative. The kelim are not preventative, they're to bring in positive. Sur Meirah is a protection that are separating between you and the Eibishter. Bringing the actual Ashras Hashchina, Ashra Velakos, Yada Machlekes Sakan, Nas Merkava Mamish V'chum. By day Beis Avedis, Nasa Mishkan, V'dirle Yisparach B'Shlim Yitzay. Great, Hatri Vasu Arbitin, Vasu Tan, Vaim Batzlach Rab Muflaga, and das ist in der letzte Nacht von Yiddish 7. There's some by the Polish, there's a minig, it's brought down in Svarim, that they don't say Tachnam Yud Gimel 7 also. But the Rebbe brings it to the Narach the day.
Pesach Shlishi.
What?
Pesach Shlishi.
Yeah. There's a Kapanim in Aveda, darf in sicher Mamshech sein, und Maschlim sein, das was Maschlim sein ist Schluss. And for sure tonight, that it's the Alayla Hilach Achar Hayim and Kachem, die Mea Tashlumin ist auch wegen der Karbanis von Schluss. Kachem Alayla Hilach Achar Hayim hat man sich die Tashlumin von Schluss in der Nacht. Maschlim sein, was bedarf Maschlim sein.
Is Tachnun and Krishma?
What?
Tachnun and Krishma or not?
Tonight? Das ist Krishma Lil Shishi Farchatzeif. Anyways, es wendet sich. Das gesündigt. Okay, eine gute Nacht.
Thank you very much.